We're continuing to go over line gear today, and as you can see by the giant pile behind me, today we're talking about clothing. There's basically four things you want to consider when picking out clothes. First off is the color, the camo pattern, whatever. That'll all be in a different video. Second thing to consider is the cut, kind of the shape of the clothes. Next up is the cloth, the fabric. Different fabrics, some are more durable than others, some breathe better. And lastly, we want to talk about the quality. When it comes to cut, probably the best option for most people, unless you're wearing a plate carrier, is the ACUs. Now, to get it right out of the way, when the ACUs initially came out, they came out at the same time that the UCP camouflage pattern came out. And they got a horrible reputation because the camouflage pattern was so bad. They're also available in other colors. This is an old multicam set from before Scorpion was adopted. You can get them in the OCP pattern. You can get, there we go, figures. So you can get them in a bunch of different colors. This is multicam. You can get Scorpion or OCP. You can get them in M81 Woodland. There's plenty of options out there if you go looking. Now, the nice thing about these, especially for airsofters, is you get a mandarin collar, so it gives you some protection for your neck. You're not getting shot in the neck. You also have Velcro all over it for name tapes. You've got both sides have name tape Velcro. You've got a rank spot for Velcro. Velcro room, two different Velcro spots on the shoulders. They kind of have Velcro everywhere, so you don't really need to stitch anything down to it if you want name tapes or anything like that. The pockets on the chest, you end up with two nice stash pockets that are easy to get to from the side. If you got anything small to carry. On the arms, you get pockets also. Personally, I don't find these to be useful at all. Maybe you have a use for them, but for me, I don't get much use out of those. Then on the pants, you've got regular stash pockets like a pair of jeans. And you get cargo pockets here. The cargo pockets have button closures on them and also have an elastic so you can pull them a little tight. It's another one, I don't get much use out of those, but the stash pockets are good for little stuff, your wallet, your keys, whatever. It does have loops for a belt. Flies are generally button flies instead of zippers. Not that big a deal. The actual chest, though, does have a zipper in here. Honestly, unless you're wearing a plate carrier, this is probably the best way to go, assuming you can get them in the right color for your area. Okay, next up for cut, we have BDUs. Now, these are an older style. They're probably go back to the 80s, I think. You have no Velcro on one of these unless you stitch it on yourself. So any patches that you want, you gotta just stitch them on directly, or you can stitch Velcro on. But once again, it's kind of a modification you have to do. All of the pockets are buttons. Of course, you can't see that well because it's camouflage, but all of the pockets are buttons. You have 4 pockets on the chest, top and bottom. Sometimes they're useful, sometimes they're not. They're all straight up and down, so you can see. And then on the pants, once again, we've got a stash pocket like a regular pair of jeans, and then we have cargo pockets here, and that has 2 buttons to close the cargo pocket. I think cargo pockets tend not to be that useful. The stash pockets are okay. But these are a good option. One of the biggest disadvantages, I think, with BDUs, especially for airsoft, is you don't have the mandarin collar. So yeah, you breathe a little better, the air getting through, but your neck's exposed to getting shot with BBs, which hurts. Personally, I'm old. I remember when these were the only thing available, and frankly, I've just been using them for so many years, it's become normal for me. Oh, they also do have belt loops, and your fly is buttons. One thing to keep in mind though with the cut of these, you end up with your undershirt showing, so you want something that's in a more subdued color, not bright white. And finally, we have combat shirts, and I don't actually have an example I can put on, but they make combat pants also. And these are something pretty much every manufacturer does slightly different. The general thing with combat shirts is you have regular ripstop material on the arms usually. And then the center of it, like covering your torso, is a much thinner material. These really only make sense if you're wearing a plate carrier that covers most of your torso, or if you're wearing a vest that covers most of your torso. For just like a minimalist chest rig, or if you're using a belt setup, these really don't work too well because this thinner material on your chest is going to get ripped up if it gets caught on anything. Combat pants, what a lot of manufacturers do is they'll basically make an ACU type pant except with built-in knee pads. Personally, I find every time I go to kneel down, the knee pad's in the wrong place on something like that, just because the pants shift a little. So I don't even own a pair of combat pants to demo on video. Pretty much every manufacturer of combat shirts does something different. This is a Rothco. As you can see, it's a fairly loose fit, and it's also fairly thick material. It's like a cotton t-shirt. There's some companies that will make things that are basically skin-tight compression shirts. So there's just lots of options out there, also lots of different collars that you'll see. And it is also worth mentioning that jerseys do exist. And most of these kind of come over from the paintball world. But basically, it's an athletic mesh shirt that's just a straight up pullover. And every manufacturer makes these are different. You kind of have to do some searching to find one of these. Wow, this thing's way too big for me. But it's just a pullover. The problem with them, if you're going to be like crawling or running through brush, woods, things like that, this material tends to get caught on branches and it rips. Every manufacturer does different. The nice thing about it, and I'm not sure you can quite see this, but this material is almost see-through and has holes in it. They're really lightweight, so in really hot weather, it's kind of nice. It'll keep you cooler. But it kind of depends on what you're doing, whether or not you're going to get this thing ripped. Some of them will have Velcro patches. This one does. This is an old Valken shirt. If you want something like this, you kind of need to go find like a paintball company that's making something in close to the right pattern that you want. It's not really something I'd recommend for most people, but it is out there. Now, when it comes to the material, a lot of manufacturers will advertise that their stuff is Ripstop. A Ripstop material will have a grid of thicker threads running through it. This is so if it does get ripped, the rip should only go to the nearest thick thread and then stop there. And if you compare that, this is the inside of a Rothco BDU jacket. This is not Ripstop, doesn't have those thick threads. On the other hand, this has gotten quite a bit of use and hasn't ripped, so it's not really that big a deal to me. Now, when it comes to the actual fabrics, there's pretty much three different things that you'll see for the materials. You'll see occasionally stuff that's 100% cotton. That's actually kind of rare because it's just not as durable as any of the other options. It's lighter weight, so you'll see that for like desert uniforms occasionally or jungle uniforms. But for the most part, just because it's not as durable, you don't see 100% cotton very much. Next material you'll see is nylon cotton blend. Most actual military uniforms are going to be the nylon cotton, and usually a 50-50 blend. The idea is the nylon gives you more durability. If you look on infrared, it supposedly doesn't reflect as much. I've looked at this stuff with night vision, haven't been able to notice a difference between that. But you get extra durability, and it's generally not much thicker or heavier or hotter than 100% cotton. The other thing you'll see, and usually with cheaper stuff, is a cotton polyester blend. The polyester gives you a lot more durability, it cuts the cost, but it also makes things a lot heavier and hotter. If you're in Massachusetts, it's not that big a deal, except during the summer, then it still gets hot there. Down here in Texas, some of the polyester blends are absolutely horrible, and you wouldn't want to wear them inside in the air conditioning because it's just so hot. What I've found is the Rothco polyester cotton blend tends to be a lot lighter than most of the others on the market. So I find that's breathable enough to be comfortable for me. And obviously, if you're getting into combat shirts or jerseys, those will all have different types of materials for the chest. And the final thing worth mentioning is the quality of the piece. There's a lot of manufacturers here and a lot of knockoff manufacturers. This, what I'm wearing right now, is a Matrix brand, made in China, sold by an airsoft company shirt. This is a Nyko, obviously woodland camo. This is supposed to be an ACU cut shirt. The pants that I bought with this were the wrong size. And they were, like, they're labeled large. I would normally wear large, and they simply didn't fit. I've worn large ACU cut stuff before. The Matrix stuff just was horribly off and didn't fit. And then if we look over here, for example, at the shoulders, in theory, this top piece of Velcro is big enough for a flag, and then the bottom piece, you can have like a unit patch or something like that. In reality, if you look at this, it's about 5 millimeters too small to actually put a flag on. It's just the wrong size. And some of the stitching is not that great. There's places where the threads are just pulling out. If you're, just using it occasionally, sure, it'll work. If you've got like one game you're planning to go to, like just for one special event, you're wearing it for one day and that's it, the cheap stuff will be okay. If you're going to get more use out of it, if it's going to be like your regular, you wear it every week type clothing, you probably want to avoid most of the really low end, I use the term airsoft brands, but basically airsoft branded stuff. If you want a specific recommendation, what I'd say for most people is just go get Rothco. Get their BDU cut pants, and then depending on, basically if you're wearing a belt setup, you probably want their BDU cut shirts. If you're wearing a plate carrier or a vest, you want their combat shirts. If you're wearing a chest rig, it could kind of go either way. But generally, Rothco makes good stuff. They're at a good price point. The materials are reasonable. They're not super hot. They're reasonably durable. You kind of can't go wrong with them. They're a good option.